Today, let's use the wall to help us get our press to handstand. Now, if you're working towards press handstand, you're going to need a certain amount of balance, a certain amount of strength, and a certain amount of flexibility. The wall can help us fill those gaps. You're going to have to change the movement a little bit depending on your strengths and weaknesses. But let's first do a test. I'm going to use the wall to see if I can get up. So I'm going to move the hands a little bit further away. I'm going to externally rotate the hands. So I'm not going to be too hard on the wrists. So in that position, I'm going to put the back of my head towards the wall, but then my upper back. Now, when I get my upper back to the wall, I'm going to push into it as hard as I can. At the same time, I'm going to walk my toes towards my hands and then just see if I can lift up. If I can lift up and get here in a strong position, see if you can push off the wall. Now, if you can do that, you're pretty close to being able to float the legs up in a handstand, as long as you can replicate that same position away from the wall. The risk is that we use the wall too much and we're pushing in this direction. So when we take the wall away, we face plant, or more likely back splat into our handstand, because we just keep going this way looking for the wall. So we need to be careful that we don't use it too much, but it can be a very good tool to help us unlock our press handstand. Now, so that's the up assessment. Can we get off the floor? Now we need to do the down assessment. Now, before we do the down assessment, we need to check that you've got the strength in the shoulders and the upper back to support your position without collapsing. The way we do that is we externally rotate the hands, we kick up to the wall like so, and then I'm going to take my back to the wall and come off again for repetitions. I want to be able to do this with control and without this happening. I don't want to be collapsing in that position. I want to be able to stay nice and strong. So as long as we can do that, we can do the next movement, which is the eccentric press to handstand assessment. Now, the goal with the eccentric is just to come down as slow as possible, as controlled as possible, and ideally kiss the toes to the floor. So I'm going to externally rotate the hands. I'm going to lean into the wall, making sure my arms stay straight and I stay in a strong position. And then ideally, I'm going to come down in a tight straddle. Now, if your flexibility is not very good, you might need to bend the knees a little bit, because you want to try and push the low back, then the mid back, and then the upper back into the wall, and see if we can come down and touch very lightly here, and ideally come all the way back up again. But first of all, just look at that eccentric. Can you come all the way down with control and touch lightly? Most of you, if you're working towards the press handstand, aren't going to be able to get all the way down with control. The wall's going to spit you out. So it's going to more look like this type of thing. So I'm going to go into the wall, and then I get to about here, and then when the hip comes off, I come down really, really heavy. So we need to work out how can we keep you closer to the wall and roll down with control until those tippy toes touch the floor. And this is where we need to be realistic with our current level. So we need to assess where we're at. Now, this one's going to give us a good idea in terms of flexibility. So I'm going to lay down on the floor. I'm going to place my hands on the wall. So like so. Actually, let's go a little bit closer so I can place my hands in that position. So I've been mimicking the straight handstand position. Now what we're going to try and do is bring the legs out to the side and then try and keep the butt on the floor as long as possible. Then it's going to go to low back. Notice the butt hasn't come off yet. Then I'm going to go low back, and then I'm going to go all the way up. See how flat I'm getting with the feet? And I can go all the way around until my toes just lightly touch my hand or lightly touch the wall, and then I come back again. Now, if your position looks more like this, then that's showing us that you have more strength than flexibility. And because my hips and my legs came up and went over, when I go into my press handstand eccentric or concentric, I need to move my body further away from the wall, or move my hands further away from the wall, so I create more space, and I'm going to use more strength to get my press. So my hands now might be more like this. I might even bend the arms a little bit. Now look, I can go out and around, and I can get up, and I can come down through that eccentric nice and slow, because I've used the position that fits my body the best. Now, if you're the opposite, if you can do it like I did, or even better, and have your legs super close to the floor and the hip hardly comes up off the floor, and you can basically fold yourself in half so your flexibility is really good here, then your position is going to be more into the wall, and actually you're going to be better at doing it that way instead of using the strength version. That just means that our legs need to come in close to the wall and around up to our straight position and back down like so. So your position is going to be more stacked, closer to the wall, straighter. The legs come around the outside more, like so. And then tippy toes touch. I can just get it. So I nearly went too close for myself then, and I only just made the concentric back up again. Now you might find that you can't do either of those two and make it all the way down to the floor. You're actually missing something that needs filling more than just changing the position. You might actually need to improve your flexibility or mobility, or improve your strength and build a bigger range. So if I'm super flexible, I might need to learn how to planche the shoulders more forwards. I might even need to learn how to use a little bit of bent arm or bent legs to help me get the press handstand. And if I'm not flexible but super strong, I might need to increase my flexibility to open that up. In terms of flexibility, we want to be working on our forward fold position to be able to fold ourselves in half here so we can easily get palms to the floor. We want to also be working that straddle position to be able to sit comfortably in this position and have good range of motion here. And then more mobility in the spine is going to really help as well, so we can articulate and round as we come down instead of it moving in chunks like this. We want to be able to roll down through the spine to be able to go up and down. So when it comes to back to wall handstand press drills, we have the eccentric, kicking up, taking the shoulders towards the wall. Remember, if you can't get this one, we need to just be able to work repetitions. It might be mini reps to start with, not taking the shoulders all the way to the wall, but as you get stronger, you take the shoulder fully to the wall, back to the wall, and back off again. Then we add the eccentric, coming down as far down as you can with control and touching. Now, if we want to progress that, if that starts to feel easy, we want to start to use the wall less and less from a leaning point of view and use it as a target instead. So that version is going to be for those of you who are very close to the press already. I might kick up into this position. Now I'm going to pull from the wall, so I'm actually freestanding balance. Then I'm going to open to my straddle, my butt might lightly touch. Then I go over, my low back might lightly touch. Now my mid upper back might lightly touch until I touch the floor. So that's the same as the version we just done, but instead of leaning on the wall, I'm just lightly touching it, giving me some help with balance and some guidance in terms of what part of the body needs to touch the wall all the way down till my tippy toes touch. Then we have the concentric, so the going up. Now that could be done at the back of the eccentric, so do an eccentric first and then go into your concentric, or you could do it by itself, remembering to come off at the top, ideally off the freestanding, and then back, again eccentric on the way back down. Remember, mimic that pathway, make sure tippy toes touch. If you can't make it all the way up, we can reduce it and go into a partial range press handstand. Now the partial range press handstand means that we're just doing a limited range of motion. It could be starting at the top, coming down to a certain point and back up again, or it could be starting in the bottom position, not from the floor, because we might not be able to get up from the floor yet, but we have a partial range, can't get up from there, have to move the hands out a touch, same thing, there. Now I can go up easily, and I'm using a partial range to get up. So that's an option, but remember, if you are using partial range, we have a gap that we need to fill. So don't just become an expert at doing this part up, because you'll never fill that. We need something to fill that gap. And it could be that you're using the concentric on the partial range to get up, but with the eccentric you go all the way down to the floor, so you fill that gap with time under tension on the down phase. And then we have the chest to wall press handstand exercise, which is a fantastic drill, but the issue is that you need to have good range of motion and good control to actually be able to use it and fill all the gaps with this one. Because if I go into my position, so if I start here and now I use the wall to help me into the straddle, now this part gets really, really hard here from a flexibility point of view, and then this next part is really hard because I'm hardly touching the wall. So if I'm very far away from the press handstand, I'm just going to collapse in that position, or I'm going to have my hands so far away mobility-wise that it's going to be impossible to get into the position. But if you are so super close to the press, it can help guide you through that pathway and make you compress really hard as you come down to bring the legs towards the arms to touch lightly. Now I can do it okay, but I can press handstand okay. So I don't tend to use that one so much for that reason, but it is a great drill. Now all of the ones I've shown so far have been using the straddle press handstand. Most people are going to get the straddle press, or even like a bent leg version of that, like a froggy press, before any other press. But you can use exactly these same drills for different variations of the press. So here I can have the hands a bit further away, and I can do more of a pike press, which uses way more strength to get into the position, or way more flexibility. But normally I wouldn't add that type of work in until you already have a straddle press to handstand. Now this has been a super fast tutorial. If you do need more help with your press training, check out my other videos, my app, or I offer online coaching. Details are all down below in the description, and I'll speak to you guys in the next one.